Okay, imagine we have our microphone set up just perfectly exactly the way we want it, and we're going through and recording a vocal track. And everything's working out fine, except there's a big note right in the middle of the song, and whenever the vocalist hits the big note, you get big distortion. That is a problem. Probably the first thing you think of is, okay, let me pull down the gain of that input channel or that mic preamp so that way we don't distort the track. But here's the problem. The rest of the track is kind of living down here, and that occasional big note is peaking up here. If you pull it all down to accommodate that big note, then the rest of the track is going to be lower, and it's going to be closer to the noise floor. So therefore, if you ever need to bring that back up, the noise floor is going to come back up with it. You really don't need to pull it down to accommodate the rest of the average level of the vocal track. You just need to deal with that big note. So how do you do it? Well, you've seen it a million times if you ever watch award shows and you see the diva at the end of the big song and she screams, and what does she do? She pulls the mic back. Well, we're not going to pull this mic back, but we'll pull our head back so that we can accommodate the big note, and that way we can still have the energy of that big note. We can have the emphasis without going into the red. So coach your vocalists into using a little bit of mic technique. Doesn't need a whole lot, but it's just a great way to even out the levels of that recording for an overall hotter level. But even when using that diva move right there, you can still end up with a vocal like this that can have a hard time punching through a mix. Listen to this one. Now let's put some secret sauce on the vocal.
If you were falling,
hear how that pops out of the mix? That secret sauce is dynamic compression. No, we need some kind of technique that allows both parts of the vocal, the big stuff and the little stuff, to sit within a mix. Let me give you kind of a visual analogy that I hope you'll never forget here. Now, imagine we had three people set up in this way. One guy is standing on a chair, another sitting, another laying down with a small business card, and we're trying to take a photo of all of these guys together. The picture would look something like this. We all get into the picture, but you really can't see any detail. Certainly you can't see the detail on the business card down there. Now, how would we fix that? We do this all the time with family reunions, right? We move people around. Obviously, we're trying to capture too much of a span. We need to have the tall guy squash himself down so that we can then get into the picture and then zoom in. Now we have all of us together and we can easily read that business card right there. This really is compression in a nutshell. It allows you to set a threshold so that once the signal passes above that threshold, the signal is squashed down by a certain ratio. So do you guys kind of get the idea of compression now? It's a way to squash the dynamic range of a signal and then raise all of it up to get a better average level. You can do this by using, say, a rack mount hardware compressor like a DBX 166, something like that, or you can do it in software. Some of the little digital studios have compression built in. Now, you don't want to overdo this or else you'll get a very squashed sound. A good rule of thumb is to set a ratio of about 4:1 and reduce the threshold until you're getting between 3 and 6 dB of gain reduction. I've actually placed some examples in the bonus disc with compression recipes for you to try on different instruments. So depending on what kind of compressor you have, you may want to place it in line with your mic to compress it on the way into your track if it's a hardware thing, or you may want to compress the resulting track later on if this is all done in software. There are good arguments for both, but we'll look later on in the effects section. I just kind of wanted to touch on dynamics because it's probably the one effect that I might use on the way into recording to compress that before it actually gets into your recorder. So here are the points to remember. We have learned that in the history of recorded music, wow, there is no better time to be alive. Multi-track recording has freed us to record different parts at different times, and that has afforded us the ability to correct individual tracks without affecting any of the others. We have the types of tools inside our recorders, either hardware or software, that the Beatles, they could only dream of, and things like effects, automation, mastering, auto punches. We are very, very, very fortunate. and that the barriers to success are no longer really about the tools, it is about the training that we need that is really going to make the difference. We learned that sound is made up of a number of elements, which is basically volume, tonal content, and environment, that the sound lives in a certain space or bandwidth in the spectrum of sound, and that while an instrument or voice can have fundamental pitch frequencies, it also has a lot of harmonics and overtones above that to give it character. Learning where those certain instruments live in that audio spectrum from the lows to the highs can really help when those instruments are competing for sonic space across that spectrum. We saw how reflections and echo reveal the environment in which a sound resides. We've learned that we need to follow basically a few basic rules of recording, which included getting a clean signal by taking care of the mic cables, bad connections, etc. How to watch our recording levels and really isolate the sound. We've learned a lot, but haven't really gotten practical yet. It's really about kind of setting the stage and setting the framework so we can move forward on solid ground. The next session will be about exactly how to position mics, how to get a killer vocal, all that kind of good stuff. I just really wanted you to know this stuff so that we could move forward from here. You've got through the most technical part of the course, and we're going to get very practical in the next session.